Okay. Okay.
So I'm the rector, so I look after the church.
Okay.
And this is 850 years old, and it was a monastic community, so the monks living here.
Okay.
But the monks they would educate some children, and they would look after some of the sick. The things we take for granted now, it was done in a very limited way in those days. But so that the church was started 850 years ago, so about 1154.
Okay.
But the Reformation came along, and Henry VIII was a Tudor king, the son of Henry VII. So he's the second Tudor king, but he has one problem. He's married, his wife's called Catherine, but she only gives him a daughter called Mary. So in those days, a king can't just have a daughter, he needs a son.
Okay.
So he's really he's in a very difficult place because Catherine is getting older. Kings don't do sons, and the only woman on the throne to that date was Matilda, and there'd been a civil war. So how could he get out of this? He had to divorce his wife. But because he was Catholic, the Pope, he had to get permission from the Pope, and the Pope said, no, sorry, we're not letting you have a divorce. So he had to find a new wife, but he had to break from the Church of Rome. So he finds Anne Boleyn, and gets rid of his other wife and sends her to Peterborough, to a nunnery. But unfortunately, Anne Boleyn only gives him a daughter as well, called Elizabeth.
Okay.
So he's got to get rid of Anne Boleyn as well, because she keeps having miscarriages. So anyhow, he gets James Seymour, gives him a son eventually. That's his third wife, but he has another 3 wives after that. But because he breaks from Rome, the churches are very rich, and Henry spends a lot of money. He likes fine clothes, he likes going to war with people. It's expensive. So he doesn't miss his opportunity to plunder the churches. And this is one of numerous churches in Yorkshire that's been destroyed. If you like, this is very similar to what's happening in England today, because we've broken from
Brexit.
We've broken from Europe.
Yeah.
So Henry VIII does the same thing. He breaks with Europe. And the Tudors do 3 things. They have an act of supremacy, in other words, take back control. They have an act in restraint of appeals, which means you can no longer appeal to Rome. You can only, an English court will decide it, very similar. And they have an act in restraint of annates, which means no more money to Rome. In other words, in today's language...
It's the same Brexit.
Today's language is 350 million for the NHS. It's very similar. But the problem is it doesn't work. So Henry VIII actually is always a Catholic till he dies. So on his deathbed he has a requiem mass. So that's the most Catholic service you can have for the dead. However, his son Edward VI is very Protestant. So he's totally different from his father. And he starts to bring about a much more radical reformation, a hard Brexit, if you like. But he dies, because he dies after 5 years, because he's got tuberculosis. So it kills him. And then the next heir to the throne is his sister Mary, well, his stepsister Mary, but she's a Catholic. So she takes the country back to Catholicism. So it's like going back into the EU. She goes back, but she's very brutal. So she chops off people, she executes lots of people. She's known as Bloody Mary. And Bloody Mary, there's a drink today called Bloody Mary, which is tomato juice and vodka. So named after Queen Mary. But she's very bloody, and the British people don't really like that. It's too hard line. But she dies 5 years after coming into office, and she's got stomach cancer, which she thinks is a baby, but it isn't. It's a tumour growing in her stomach. So she dies. Then Elizabeth I comes to the throne, and she says, right, how do I solve this? So she puts together what's called the Elizabethan settlement. So they find a way of getting everyone together and finding a form of words around which they can all agree. And we still use that prayer book here today. So from the reign of Elizabeth I all the way through to the reign of Elizabeth II, we've used that prayer book. It was interrupted by the English Civil War. And then the prayer book restored under Charles II. But broadly speaking, it's similar to the prayer book of Elizabeth I in the reign of Elizabeth II.
Second, okay.
And it's still going strong.
Okay.
It's not perfect, but it's popular,
Okay.
even to this day. So I'll leave that with you.
Thank you very much.
Nice
Thank
to see you.
Nice
Got
to see
a
you,
guide
sir.
to Bolton Priory and its history.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice.